I recently took creatine for 1 month, and I wanted to share my experience as a runner, specifically a runner that had started training for a half marathon coming up in May. I had heard about creatine my whole life, but I assumed it was for gym rats or meatheads or bodybuilders. And then recently I had heard that there were some benefits for endurance athletes and cognitive benefits for everyone. And so my curiosity was piqued. And coincidentally, around this time that I was interested in looking into creatine, I had a company called Creagums reach out to me and ask me if I wanted to try the product in exchange for a video. And I agreed, as long as I would be allowed to say whatever I wanted and that they wouldn't be able to review this video before I posted it. They agreed. So here we are, probably close to a month and a half after I started taking creatine. I share all of this because I want you to know, as the person watching this video, that I am not being influenced even in the slightest bit by the company that provided this product. This is not a commercial for Creagums, nor is it a commercial for creatine. I am just sharing my experience in the hopes that I am helping you decide whether or not creatine is something that you might be interested in. And while we're talking about this, I am not an expert. I am not a medical expert. I am just someone sharing my experience. So before you make any medical decisions, consult a medical professional. But before I jump into my experience, I want to quickly go over what creatine is and what creatine isn't. Because pretty much my entire life growing up, I thought creatine was a steroid, but turns out it's not. Creatine is a naturally occurring compound in muscle cells that help produce energy during high intensity exercise. Creatine is naturally found in food products that we consume, like dairy, eggs, and meat. The problem is though, that a 16-ounce steak only has 1 or 2 grams of creatine in it. And so it's really hard for us to get decent amount of creatine on a daily basis with normal food. And so that's where supplements come in. The gummies that I've been taking, I've only been taking 1 a day, and each gummy has 3 grams of creatine in it. And so I've been able to get creatine on a much more consistent basis. Creatine as a supplement is one of the most well-researched and effective supplements for people that are looking to gain strength, power, and muscle growth. And then recently, they've found even more benefits that are linking to recovery, endurance, and even cognitive benefits. And those latter benefits are the reasons why I was interested in trying creatine. So without further ado, let's jump into my personal experience. During my time taking creatine, I tracked some metrics. Some of them were subjective and others were objective. Subjective meaning they were kind of hard to quantify. And so think things like injury prevention, sense of well-being, and perceived recovery time. Objective metrics that I tracked were things like my endurance performance, my muscle size, and my strength in terms of my ability to lift certain weight. And I tracked my weight gain. I also did some sleep tracking, and I don't know if I should put that in objective metrics or subjective because it's kind of a gray area. But let's jump into the subjective metrics that I tracked. First off, let's talk about well-being. I want to say that my sense of well-being improved, but this is really hard to track and really hard to quantify. And if I were pressed on this, then I would probably say that that sense of overall well-being is probably better because I was achieving goals, because I was hitting metrics that I wanted to hit, and less about any supplement that I was taking. So while I do think creatine may have helped here, it's probably more because it helped hit exercise goals. Next, let's talk about my perceived recovery time. This is also something that's kind of hard to track, but it's a little bit more on the objective side. So as a baseline, I have been working out for a very long time using both resistance training and running. I have noticed over time that it takes about 12 hours for me after a really strenuous workout to start to feel soreness start to set in my muscles. And then it will increase until about 24 hours, somewhere between 24 and 36 hours, my soreness will peak. And then I will start to recover after that, and I will be fully recovered within 72 hours. After I started taking creatine, I quickly noticed that that soreness had changed. It took a lot more in terms of strenuous exercise for me to get sore. And then once I was sore, I noticed that I would recover much quicker. And so while I would still start to feel the soreness at about 12 hours, it was definitely already waning by the 24-hour mark. And then by 36 hours, I was fully recovered. And that included both aerobic and anaerobic exercise. So I think creatine definitely helped on the recovery time. Next, let's talk about injury prevention. This is, again, something that kind of blurs the lines between objective and subjective. But when I started taking creatine, I had some knee pain. It was mild, but over the course of the last month of me taking creatine, I do not have any knee pain anymore. Like, it's completely gone. But once again, I think this is causation, but through another avenue rather than just creatine helped my injury go away. I think creatine helped me get the muscle strength that I needed in order for my knee pain to go away. Talk to your local physical therapist, and they will tell you that strengthening certain muscles around the knee helps knee pain go away. And so I don't think creatine helped my knee pain directly. I think what creatine may have helped is increase that muscle size, that muscle strength that decreased the pain in my knee. I hope that makes sense. So those are my thoughts around injury prevention. Next, let's talk about sleep. And this is, of course, really hard to track. I mean, I have my Apple Watch Ultra that I use to track my sleep at night, and it's not necessarily considered to be the most reliable way to track your sleep, but it is something that I've used for a very long time, and so it's a good baseline. It's good. It's something that I could refer back to as my baseline. And so for a very long time, my resting heart rate at night was somewhere between 36 and 38 beats per minute. And then when I started taking creatine, I noticed that my resting heart rate increased by 1 to 3 beats per minute. And it took a very long time for that to come back down, and it still hasn't fully come back down within 1 or 2 beats per minute. So I started somewhere around 36 to 38 beats per minute, and now I'm like 38 to 40 beats per minute at night. And so I'm kind of back to where I was, like in that 38 beats per minute range, but I'm just not quite there. And I just thought that was interesting. But in terms of sleep quality, I think it is about the same. I don't think it's any better. I don't think it's any worse, but I don't know if I'm the best example or the best person to talk about this because I have young kids. And so my sleep is anything but consistent. So in terms of sleep quality, I don't think I can speak to that, but in terms of resting heart rate during sleep, I thought that was kind of interesting. Now let's talk about objective metrics, and specifically weight gain. When I started taking creatine, I weighed 150.4 pounds. And over the course of a month, I gained about 4 pounds. When I finished, I weighed 154.1 pounds. And so that seems to be on par with what I expected when I started taking creatine, because I know you can gain water weight when you start taking creatine. Next, let's talk about muscle size. I did my best to be as objective as possible using a tape measure to measure my muscle size. And so while it's not, perfectly scientific, I think that I got a pretty good reading in terms of muscle growth over the course of a month. And so I'm going to reference my notes as I go through this and tell you the muscle size when I started and the muscle size when I ended. My quads increased in size from 20 inches to 21.5 inches. My biceps increased from 13 to 13.5 inches. Chest circumference from 38 inches to 39 inches. Even my calves grew from 14 to 14.5 inches. And like I said, the system of measuring is far from perfect, but I did also notice that I was getting stronger faster than I ever had before. And I wish I had taken metrics down in terms of the weight that I was lifting before I started taking creatine to compare to after, but I didn't. But I can tell you that it is significantly better. I had plateaued really hard for about 6 to 9 months, I was really struggling to lift heavier weights. I was not gaining strength. But when I started taking creatine, I noticed that I broke through that plateau and I had increased the weight that I was able to lift across the board, whether that was legs, arms, shoulders, anything. And so across the board, I got bigger muscles, but they also got stronger. Now let's talk about running performance. So what I did was I did 2 workouts, an endurance workout and a track workout on week 0 before I started taking creatine. And then 4 weeks later, I did the same 2 workouts and I tracked the time and I tried to record a perceived effort on those workouts. And so for the track workout, I have specific times. And once again, I'm going to reference my notes for those. So for the track workout, on the first, so week 0, I ran a 400 in 1 minute and 10 seconds. Week 4, I ran a 400 in 1 minute and 12 seconds. So I actually got 2 seconds slower there. For the 800, I did a 240. And for week 4, on the 800, I ran a 238. And then I did a 1 mile run on the track. And for week 0, I ran a 532. And on week 4, I ran a 526. So that was 6 seconds faster. So that was my experience in terms of a speed workout on running after taking creatine. I don't know exactly what to think of that data, and I'll kind of leave that up to you in terms of what you think, because I did get slightly faster on 2 of those distances, on the 800 and the mile. But, I'm going to talk about correlation versus causation later, but, that I'll just leave that up to you. Now, as far as the endurance run went, what I did was I ran the exact same route. It's a little under 10 miles. And what I did was I did my best to stay in the exact same heart rate zone. So I stayed in zone 2 for the entire time, almost. There was a little bit of variability there, but I don't know how much better, how much more accurate I could have been. So in overall, what happened was I ran basically the exact same time. I mean, I think the second time, the second time I ran it, after 4 weeks of creatine, I think I was a minute faster, but there's too much going on there for me to say that that is directly attributed to the creatine. And a minute over the course of 10 miles is not that big of a difference, especially when you're talking about zone 2. It's not like I was all out trying to get a PR in a 10-mile route. So that's where we are in terms of running performance. Plus, zone 2 training and progress in the zone 2 area can take upwards of months, if not years. And so it's hard to know if that was progress or if I just kind of stayed the same. Either way, you can take away whatever you want to take away from that data. So that takes me to the product. How was the actual creatine? How was the gummy? And Creagums was actually fantastic. I have absolutely nothing bad to say, and I have nothing to gain from saying this. I am not affiliated with this company in any way. I don't get kickback. If you use the link that they gave me in the bio that I'll put in the description, I don't get anything from that. I think you get 10% off, but I don't get anything from it. And so I don't care if you use this, if you go find another creatine to use, but I'm telling you that my experience was fantastic. The taste, the texture, the quality of the gummies, they were great through the whole time that I was taking them. They never globbed together like some of the other vitamin gummies that I've tried before. I was just very impressed with my overall experience with Creagums, with the creatine. And so, like I said, I will be using the product, but I'm not affiliated with the company in any way, and they are not reviewing this. They are not asking me to say this. This is my unbiased review of the product. So I hope you can trust that. Now, with all of that out of the way, there are a few asterisks that I have to address throughout the whole thing with creatine, and it has nothing to do with the product. It has everything to do with the fact that this is my N of 1 experience, meaning that there is no one that I'm comparing this to. I'm comparing the me before I took creatine to the me after I took creatine, and there's no placebo to compare it to. So this entire thing could be placebo effect. It really could. But there were some other factors that I also wanted to include. And this might sound kind of funny to you, but like with the weight gain, my wife recently started making sourdough, and I have eaten an exorbitant amount of sourdough in the last month and a half or so. So while I did gain weight, and it could have been the creatine, it also could have been the amount of sourdough I've been eating recently. And that sourdough is made with high protein flour, so maybe some of the muscle gain was from the increase in protein. I don't know. There's too many correlating factors here for me to say that all of the benefits that I've had, that all of the gains that I feel like I've been able to accomplish, that they're all directly attributed to creatine. And maybe I'm making this overly scientific, but I'm just telling you that there are way more factors outside of creatine that I could not have factored for in terms of variables and things like that. So, and then on top of that, when you're taking creatine, you need to make sure that your water intake is high because your muscles retain water, and it's really important for you to have a good amount of water. And so I was very vigilant with my water intake, which could have attributed to many things. It could have attributed to me feeling better, an overall sense of well-being, because I was actually drinking a good amount of water rather than running dehydrated like I have in the past. But that's just one more variable that it could be factoring into that. And then one of the biggest variables is that it's springtime now. When I started taking creatine, it was still winter-ish, and now we are like really getting into springtime, and that running in the spring is fantastic. Working out in the spring, living into springtime. If you live in a cold climate like I do, coming into spring is like starting a new life. So all I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of variables, a lot of factors that I cannot account for. And so I just wanted to talk about that and make sure you know that this whole study, this whole experience is very hard to say that it is objectively attributed to creatine. And so that leads me to my conclusion here. What was my overall takeaway in terms of, as a runner taking creatine, what do I think? And as I already mentioned, I will continue to take creatine. I think that there is enough compelling evidence in my mind that creatine helped me gain muscle in my upper body, which is something that I have struggled with as a runner for as long as I can remember. I think that the strength gain that I experienced and the muscle size growth that I experienced is directly attributed to creatine. Like I said, there are many other factors, many other variables, but that's my takeaway. And on top of all of that, as a runner, creatine has not reduced my endurance capabilities at all. And it may have even increased it in some ways. I mean, that's still to be determined. And, we'll see how my half marathon plays out here in about a month. All that to say, I'm super satisfied with my experience with creatine. If you are like me and you're looking for something that could help cognitively, like I said, I don't really know if it helped me cognitively, but it also helped me gain muscle, and it could have helped me in endurance. And supposedly there are many other benefits, like cardio benefits, like heart health. I mean, when I say cardio, there are so many benefits that are potentially linked back to creatine that I think that the evidence is there that most people should be taking creatine. And so that is my experience as a runner And I just wanted to share that. I really hope this was helpful or interesting or helped you decide whether or not this is something that you want to do. So thanks for watching.
Daddy, do you want to go on a walk with us?
Yes, I do.
What is this?
That's a microphone.
Are you talking?
Yeah, I was talking into the camera.
I'm not talking to the camera. What the? What? Oh, yeah. Let's see it.